do you want to talk about porn at all? And
I do. I was going to transition there with you right now, because it's something you've spoken openly about. So
probably, again, a little differently than how you do.
I don't think it's that different. I think our views on it are pretty aligned.
Well, I think we both agree that it's bad.
I try to stay out of the moral conversation
Yeah.
with it. I, in fact, actually think that does more harm to men, specifically Christian men, when you
I don't
try
even
to
think
shame
about
them.
that. I agree. Yeah.
But I do hear from a lot of Christians, but I try to stay out of the moral argument. So yeah, what are your views, and why did you feel the need to start talking about it?
You know, again, as part of my journey, my personal development journey, at one point I used to watch porn. I would never say that I was addicted to it because I've never had an issue getting females, but I liked it. I liked it, and I didn't think or recognize that there was anything wrong with it.
So it's funny that you said that. I've actually taken one of your videos that you did, and I kind of did a reaction to that. I don't want to push you here, but I'm curious why you said that, because I don't think that we know that there's no, watching pornography and having sex are two different behaviors. I've spoken with hundreds, if not thousands of men that
even watching porn and masturbating, not watching porn, are two different things.
Yeah. So why the I wouldn't say I was addicted because I had no problem having females, because I actually think that keeps a lot of men stuck in it as well. I maybe I even say that's a harmful message.
Maybe. I will say that at that point of my life, I was putting a lot of work into improving my character. And as I did that, a number of ways I've read over 1,000 books. I used to go to seminars. I invest a lot. I have a ton of investments, financial related, but the thing that I've invested in that has produced the most consistent compounding parabolic returns was the investments that I've made in my own personal development and education. And, I've done psychedelics, and we can talk at length about that if you wish. Through the course of my personal development journey, which I consider the psychedelic component to be part of that, I started to have an increase in just consciousness and general awareness. And I started to better understand how I am supposed to feel. I started to be in closer alignment with my highest self, or at least I became more aware of when I was not. And, just one day, I think I just developed this awareness after watching porn that I felt like a little ashamed. I felt shitty. And then I started to kind of just really analyze that thought and analyze the behavior in general, and thought to myself, man, there's actually not been a single fucking time in the history of me jerking off fucking porn at that point, maybe 15 fucking years, on and off intermittently, that I actually felt good about it after the fact. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, being intentional about improving my character was very, very, very important to me. It was very important to me. And part of having a strong character is being proud of yourself. And I wanted to do as many things as possible to be proud of myself. And I wanted to basically remove anything that didn't add value. And I realized very quickly, because it wasn't difficult for me to stop doing it. It wasn't difficult for me to stop doing it because I had that realization that, oh, this isn't benefiting me and I don't need this. And then I stopped doing it. And I would say within a week, I developed an increased level of awareness that my baseline was just measurably better. My mood, my confidence, my focus, everything, my masculine energy, which again, sexual energy, we can use that term synonymously with masculine energy, but porn, it's detrimental for a lot of reasons. And I think that obviously, you're a coach, you talk about this at length. I think probably the worst part about, porn for men is the fact that it's going to fuel an instant gratification mindset. Because if you want to excel in life, you have to be okay doing things that you don't want to do when you do not feel like doing them. That is what discipline is. And at the end of the day, if you are not even disciplined enough to keep your own hand off your own dick, then that tells me that you're going to have a hard time in every other area of life as well.
Was this decision in your life after that 2015, 2016 transitional year where you really went all in on the development of Chris?
It sure was.
Yeah. Um, I've said this before. For me, our journeys are very similar. I don't think I've had the lows that you've had, but I've had some of those experiences, and I haven't reached the level of success financially, business wise, but I think I've succeeded in many other things. But been a personal development junkie for 20 years, right? I awakened the giant back when I was 18 years old, searching for things. Had this emptiness inside of me. Got into fitness, changed my life, bodybuilding, through my 20s and into my early 30s. I had a very similar kind of wake up call in 2019 when I looked myself in the mirror, was trying to create, self-development, fitness style content, and it wasn't really registering. And I'm like, Frank, you're a fraud. You're helping people. You say you're helping them become the best version of yourself. Yet when you're done with this, you're spending your nights consuming porn and masturbating every single day. And it was that realization for me, plus having gone down a little bit of a rabbit hole with the science, Your Brain on Porn, Gary Wilson, great book. So I started to understand the real impact. But I didn't have a really difficult time as well. And what I say is it took me 20 years to quit porn in one day because I developed discipline in many areas of my life. I developed self-regulation tools. I was meditating. I was journaling already back then. I just never thought that I could apply those things to remove this problem in my life. And I think what I've tried to do in our work, at least, is take a hyper-focused personal development, growth-centric approach to addiction recovery. Complete opposite of what AA does, right? You got to wake up every day and call yourself an addict. You got to, get through this thing one day at a time. It's like, no, we can become this new person if we raise our standards in our life, if we develop better habits, if we set a clear aim and vision for our life that brings us fulfillment and reward. So we don't need pleasure. Some guys that come in have never read a personal development book. Their journey is going to be a little bit longer. Yet we get some guys that are, like I mentioned, we work with a lot of high achieving individuals. They've just never taken that type of focus because it's been moral issues or shame, or you got to count these days. Well, when you're counting days that you've gone without porn, you're holding on to the identity of something that you're struggling with. So I think a lot of the things that you're speaking to are what we integrate into our work. And it's been kind of my experience as well. When you shift the perspective of how you look at this problem in your life, you're using it as a tool to release stress or deal with anxiety. Well, build some tools in your life. And I think we can kind of shift now maybe to some of your.
Well, just on that note, as an extension of that, when I started to recognize that, jerking off to porn wasn't something that was in alignment with the person that I wanted to become, then after a week started to feel a difference in my baseline for the better. And then I started to come across research on it. And then that's when it all made sense. And it made sense because the thing about porn and how harmful it is for men's mental health is all of the research is out there. All of the literature is out there. And this is a very triggering topic. People they feel like, if you're speaking out against porn or just kind of educating as to why porn is to your detriment, people are so quick to defend it in the comments. It's actually kind of embarrassing when every time I've done a video about around porn, and then I've said some things that might be a little extreme, right? Just to get the message to resonate at a deeper level. It's just alarming to me how many men are just passionately defending the fact that they jerk off staring at their fucking cell phone screen multiple times a day. It's crazy to me. And I understand that people perhaps aren't aware that there is a lot of research, and more research is coming out every month on it, because it's a real thing now. It's a real thing that men are struggling with from an addiction standpoint. I think that if you're willing to just have the humility to look at the argument that kind of goes against what you want to think naturally, I think that's when real growth is going to take place. And not jerking off to porn, I think, is the easiest thing you can do as a man to move your life forward. It is so simple. But if you can't even do that, I'm not really sure that you'll be able to do anything noteworthy.
This is what I said to Bradley when I was on his podcast, because we were kind of having this back and forth. He was pushing back on it. Brad's, comes from a different generation. I don't think he really had a handle on it. He doesn't speak to men like you and I do. And he was having a hard time even grasping it. And I told him if there's a guy listening to this right now that's kind of speaking some of these defense terms, like he's kind of, pushing back on this. Well, ask yourself, why are you aggressively pushing back so hard? And then here's a challenge for you. Go 30 days without it, because it's going to reveal one of two things to you. Kind of what you said. You either can't do it, which I think a red flag should go up in your life. If you can't go 30 days without staring at a screen and playing with yourself, right? That should signal some type of red flag. If you do succeed in it though, what will happen is what you're speaking to as well, is you'll raise a consciousness. You'll become more aware. You'll become more focused. You'll become more present in the relationships in your life. So you're either going to get clear that I do have a problem and maybe let me address this, or you're going to prove to yourself that it isn't something that you need. And actually my life is a whole lot better without it.
True.
Right?
Yeah, I completely agreed.
Yeah. How have you noticed it's improved maybe relationships? This is something that I didn't really understand, is how disconnected and unpresent I was with people in my life, both men and women. One of the quickest things I experienced was just the ability to sit in a room with somebody and feel engaged and intimate and connected with them. How has that changed for you, and what other positive benefits have
I
you
think just across the board, there was just measurable improvements. And of course, the way I was in relationships changed as well. Because well, first of all, I think there's a huge distinction between people like me who have sexual access and other people who, when they're looking at pornography, they're looking at women that they realistically could never be in that situation with. And I think that that's psychologically, I think that's damaging. I think that adds an element of psychological trauma to the already complex equation. And if you are playing with yourself, pleasuring yourself to that, when you go and try to have a real relationship or an intimate relationship, it's not going to happen the way that it should. It's not going to happen the way that your biological process has evolved to happen. And we are just basically disrupting what is correct and what is neurologically how we were evolved. And look, man, I don't, when I talk about this, and I'm being a little kinder and gentler about it than how I normally do because of what you do. But again, like, if you can't even keep your own hand off of your own dick, you're not a fucking man to begin with.
No, I don't want to feel like I'm holding you back at all, man. I invited you here because, I value what you do, right? Maybe because I think you reach a segment of the male audience that perhaps maybe I can't, just based on, kind of some of the packaging of the ways that we do things. I never want to have anything that's going to harm anybody, but
to expand on that a little bit, my situation wasn't, I didn't have porn addiction. I was doing something that I recognized wasn't adding value to my life. And in fact, was actually doing the opposite.
So here's where I would say, once again, I don't want to cut you here, but so I had, you mentioned all this research coming out. I've had the honor to speak with Dr. Anna Lemke. She runs Stanford's addiction department, spent 25 years working in both the sex and the pornography addiction space, like one of the literal leaders of kind of raising this from a clinical and also research perspective. I had her define addiction for me, because I think a lot of times, Socrates said, the definition of terms is the beginning of wisdom, right? So I think a lot of people push back because, one, they don't understand what addiction actually means. I'm drinking a substance or I'm inhaling something. Addiction, defined in Dr. Anna Lemke's lab, is the continued or repeated use of substance or behavior despite negative consequences. So he had recognized that there had been some negative consequences. I didn't like who I was. It was, limiting my growth in certain areas. I'm not telling you, once again, that you had an addiction, Chris, but I think that if guys can begin to look at it through that lens, is it holding you back from becoming the highest version of yourself? If so, great. What do we do now? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, I didn't recognize it as being a problem until it was no longer in my life. And I realized, holy shit, like, I am a better version of me because of this. But a lot of young men today are in a completely different situation than I am. Okay. Most young men are sexless. They're not working out. Their testosterone is low, despite the fact that they're in their 20s. And it's a huge fucking problem. And if you are constantly resorting to pornography every time you get the slightest urge, you are not only tanking your mental health, destroying your testosterone, but you're also depleting your masculine energy. And Masculine energy is what a man needs to go out in the world and fucking conquer. If you, every time you feel the slightest urge or you come across a post on Instagram, like you feel the need to compartmentalize yourself, go hide in the bathroom and, jerk off in a box of fucking tissues or something like that. Like you have to understand that like you are leaving a lot of life on the table. The way life is supposed to be lived is going to require you to be a little horny. You need to be horny. You need to be hungry,
Yes.
right? And that is what gives you the drive and the desire to go out in the world and make fucking things happen, whether it's women, whether it's business, whether it's a financial goal, regardless. That masculine energy, that masculine drive is so important to a man's existence. But if we're constantly depleting that valuable resource, that valuable tool, it's going to result in complete stagnation.
Napoleon Hill talks about it. I think it's in chapter 12 of Think and Grow Rich, right? The power of sex transmutation, right? I'd read that book probably half a dozen times before that chapter even hit me. And it was much like you getting on the other side of this, actually removing it from my life, showed some of these things, revealed some of these things. Hey, you're not pursuing these things as hard as you possibly can because you're hijacking your pleasure reward center over here with a lot of this. So
Well, really quickly, one of the things that I like to do when I talk about this is just offer up what I believe to be a simple solution. And that's just creating a barrier of resistance because anybody can go on their phone, go into screen time, go to app limits, or excuse me, not app limits, go into screen time, go into content and privacy restrictions, and elect to not allow adult websites. It is a very simple thing. As you can see, I don't know if you probably can't see that, but that small barrier of resistance when you're trying to make a positive change will serve as a reminder because I'm not saying that you're going to do that and then you're never going to jerk off to porn again. But what I am saying is when you do kind of resort back to the familiar, you pull up the whatever, you attempt to pull up whatever website, you're going to be confronted with a message that says, hey, that ain't who the fuck we are anymore. And that's valuable. That little barrier of resistance, that little moment of self-reflection, I think is extremely important. And I think just setting up, having systems and processes in place that allow you to essentially force the outcomes that you're after. I mean, I think that is the only way that you're going to win at the absolute highest level. And something as small as that. I mean, I don't look, but I still have porn sites blocked. It's not an issue for me. I never go to try to pull it up, but I still have it blocked just because I just think that that's the right thing to do. I think that that's the person I want to become. And I just really know no other way.
it could be a great first step. And like you said, that barrier and boundary. And then if you're taking the approach that you and I are talking about here, where it's not about the quitting of this behavior, it's about becoming the absolute best version of yourself. So in that process, you're raising your self-awareness. Okay. When you go to pull that up and it sigs that, you get that block, okay, put it down and ask yourself some questions. Why am I trying to run to this right now? What is it that I'm running from? Or what am I trying to run to? And how could I solve those problems in other areas of my life? Like, this is kind of me stepping in as coach here, right? But I think that's a great first step, but you got to use that as a tool. But once again, get back into your own personal growth and development, which is going to be the ultimate pathway to live the life where it's not even something you think about.
Yeah, agreed. And low testosterone men in their 20s who are sedentary or playing video games, who are in front of a screen fucking 12 hours a day, right? Who are constantly on Pornhub. Again, they're depleting their masculine energy. And that's the same masculine energy. And the argument would be like, oh, well, I can't get a girl and all this. Well, the reason you can't get a girl is because you're depleting your own masculine energy, the masculine energy that's required for you to go to the gym, to work hard, to get as strong and fit as possible in that process, become more confident so you can then approach that girl. And maybe you're a little nervous, but the combination of the confidence that you've built in the gym and the fact that you're horny because you're not constantly jerking off to Pornhub will allow you to step up and have that conversation. It's an extremely important part of a young man's character development, the ability to talk to women. And communication in general is the most important skill as it relates to business. But as a young man, having just the capacity to just have a conversation with a woman is really important. And if you have an awareness that you are not comfortable doing that, that is going to destroy your self-worth and self-esteem and eradicate your confidence.